I was really more fearful that I was going to wake up in 10 years and not be able to, and not have a life that I could be proud of, that I could actually feel like was worthwhile. Because, like I said earlier, I really did feel like my career was on a sort of predictable autopilot. It was taking me somewhere that I could see basically what it would look like 10 years from now if I were to stay on that track. And it would have been, like I said, good stuff probably. But the predictability of it really bothered me.
I'm Larry Cornett, and this is Invincible Life. So welcome to the show, Corey. For folks that don't know, I met Corey Vinny on Substack, which I think is a wonderful platform. I mean, it's got its problems, but with the notes, it's been an opportunity to meet some really extraordinary people who are doing extraordinary things. Came across Corey and his exciting journey that he's on with his husband, eventually going to sail around the world and kind of have their safe and stable life set behind or set aside for a while, or maybe forever. I don't know. But I just wanted to welcome you to the show, and maybe we could start with you sharing a little bit more about who you are in this journey that you're on right now.
Yeah, thank you, Larry, for inviting me here, and hello to everyone. I'm Corey, and about a year ago now, a little bit more than a year ago, my husband and I decided that we wanted to do something a lot different in our lives. We were both I was in my late 30s, my husband was in his early 40s, and we had some really cool, exciting careers that we had built over the previous decade, really. My husband was a mechanical engineer by training, and I was a PhD scientist working for the government, and had a really, it sounds similar to
Quite
what
a
Larry was
change.
saying. Yeah, right. It was sort of a dream job that I envisioned at one point about a decade earlier, and got that dream job, that one that people told
Nice.
me might have been rare or hard to get or whatever. And I was working in that career for about 6 years, and it was great. I saw a future full of promotions and pay raises
Sure.
and really exciting projects and amazing coworkers, like really, really inspiring folks and really smart folks to work with and all this. But at one point, I basically decided that that wasn't what I wanted the rest of my life to look like. And and we had this. I always had that inkling. I think for the last 5 years or so, we've kind of been planning as if something like this might happen, where there would be a
Okay.
tipping point someday where we might want to leave. And so we've been saving kind of accordingly and trying to
Okay.
limit our expenses a little
Good.
bit,
Good.
just with that with that thought in mind that, hey, we might not want to just be doing this forever.
Right.
And then we had, then we had a series of moments that really led to the big decision to jump. And one of
Okay.
them was that we decided we weren't going to have kids. At one point we thought we were going to adopt, and
hmm
we had went through some of that process of really looking into that, what that would entail, and we decided it wasn't for us. And that opened up some opportunities maybe
Sure.
to do
Yeah.
something a
Yeah.
little different, at least in the short term. And then at one point, about last spring, my husband suddenly lost his job, and it's
Mm-hmm.
something that it happens, right? People lose their jobs for different reasons or whatever. And originally, we thought that he would just get another job, just a similar sort of job. And
Right. Yeah.
and at one point, we kind of just challenged that idea, just thinking,
Yeah.
do we really need to keep doing that? Like, is there something else we could do? And once we
Right.
opened up
Yeah.
that door, it was like a floodgate, and we couldn't really put it back in the box,
Right. Right.
because I was really against the idea of actually doing something different at first. And then about 3 days later, maybe I went back to my husband and was like, so what were you thinking exactly? Like, what do you have in mind? And then that started a journey of really figuring out
Oh,
what
wow.
this next chapter would look like.
That's fantastic. Yeah. I think I think that touches on something that a lot of people have these pivotal moments. Sounds similar when I kind of stepped away from my corporate career in 2010. I'm going to take the summer off and just be with my family because I hadn't had a vacation like 8 years and just grinding in the career. I just did a few interviews, like you said. Oh, I can get another job, and then at some point, I'm like, well, what if I don't? What if I never go back? Could I do that? And I had done some consulting before, and I was like, well, let me just do some consulting, and then we'll see. And that was 2010. I never went back. Because I think it's easy to stay on the path that you're familiar with and everybody wants you to. That was the thing I heard. Like, what are you doing, man? You're like throwing away a 20-year career and your degree and all that stuff. And it's like, I don't know. It's like, if I don't do something different, when am I going to do it? Am I going to wait till I'm 70, 80 years old to kind of live a life? And I think that's a moment when a lot of people could take a step back and say, do I have to stay on the same path? Could I do something different? And it sounds like you did something really smart, which is what I tell people. It's like, if you give yourself some flexibility, like saving and controlling your expenses and having a little bit of a cushion, you have time to breathe. You have time to say, well, let's think about what's next, versus if you're living a paycheck to paycheck. And I know this is kind of a privilege. So I'll kind of say that so people don't say, hey, man, that's a privilege. Like, it is. It is privilege to take a step back and not be worried about paying rent next month. But it is a time to reflect and say, do I really want this for the rest of my life? And I've been following Corey's journey. He's sharing stuff on Substack, and I'll share links in the show notes so you can go follow him and follow the journey, because it's exciting and it's fun, all the discoveries you're having. Maybe you could share a little bit about what the journey's been like so far. You've already sailed to New York, and right in the middle of kind of a storm there, but it sounds like you're in a pretty safe place. One question I have is, like, what's been the most pleasant surprise as you've been on this journey and kind of reinventing your life and doing something very different? What has been like, wow, that's a surprise, and it was pleasant. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, that's a great question to reflect on. And yeah, we are in New York currently, where we were not pointing our boat overseas quite yet, because we
Yeah.
are still getting some of the skills. I mean, that's
Smart.
another thing. Is we started this journey with very limited sailing knowledge. A lot of what we saw was really just an attraction to the lifestyle and to the lifestyle of adventure, and some of the ways that people were living in a more frugal and simple life,
Right. Yeah.
built around nature and things like that. And so sailing was something that was pretty new to us, and we had to learn it from the ground up. And so one of the surprising things is that we have been able to learn to become
That's
actually
cool.
pretty decent
Yeah.
sailors, which is really neat.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's a very, very steep learning curve, I think. There have been a few times where we're just not really sure what to do exactly.
Sure.
And so
Yeah.
we have a set of skills that we can draw on, and we go with that, and it has worked fine. We've had people tell us that that's just how you learn, like seasoned sailors that say
Yeah.
that every time they go out, they still learn a hard-earned
I
lesson.
bet. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Exactly.
and so we have many of those. But it's been really amazing to just see how we've been able to roll with it and really just learn and still get up
Mm-hmm.
the next day and want more of it, because it is
Yeah.
this unraveling, or this discovery process of seeing what's
Sure.
possible for us. And we're seeing now, after it's been about 10 weeks now since we left North Carolina, where we fixed up the boat, and we headed north to New York because of the hurricane season. And so
Right.
originally we were going to actually head south into the Caribbean right away, but
Mm,
just given the amount of time it took to get the boat ready and all that,
sure.
we decided to head north, and that ended up being great because we're learning, and we got to see New York City. We actually sailed through Manhattan a couple days ago, and it was just
That's so cool.
unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, the surprising thing has just been our ability, my ability to learn. I'm surprising myself every day, but also how we've been able to adjust to a life of relative simplicity. We don't
Yeah.
actually have a lot of bells and whistles on our boat. In order for us to be able to do this indefinitely, we needed to really make some big decisions about what we wanted our boat to look like and all
Right.
the amenities that it would have and stuff. And so that was one of the trade-offs we made by doing this younger, I think, because if we would have waited 15 more years, we might have bought like a different boat. We
Sure.
most
Yeah.
likely would have. But we went with what we had, and so we bought a pretty simple boat. Like, we don't even have a fridge, for
That's what I
instance, on our
saw. I
boat.
was like, wow.
Yeah, and
That
it's
changes how
intense.
you buy food and cook. I bet
Yeah,
that does.
yeah, and even sailors think that that's pretty intense, or that's pretty, like, extreme.
Sure. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
again, one of the big pleasant surprises is how incredible it is. Like, I just made a massaman curry today with tofu, shelf-stable tofu and coconut milk and a bunch of veggies that I've been able to keep for over a couple of weeks. And it's like we're not living without at all.
Right.
It, we're
Yeah.
where we have everything we need and more. And I think that's just been like one of the big surprises is how well we've adjusted. That said, there are some challenges still,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, I bet.
happy to chat about that.
Yeah, that was kind of the next question is like, what's been an unexpected, not so pleasant surprise or a challenge or something? It's like, okay, that's something we hadn't anticipated.
Yeah. One of the maybe less pleasant things is that we're not able to just do anything whenever we want. Of course, we are.
Yeah.
It's funny because when we signed up for this life, we thought the three things that were really keeping us um, focused on sailing specifically was a life of adventure,
Yeah.
passion, and freedom. And freedom from what? A bunch of things, like freedom from a
Right.
career that I was lacking passion for, freedom from just some of the predictability of what my life
Hmm.
was
Hmm.
before this. But there's also a lot of things where we don't have a lot of freedom. Like for instance, our lives are dictated by the weather 100%
Sure.
of the
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
and in some ways it makes it really simple because it's just like, well, how's the weather looking? And that
Right.
determines what we're able to do on a given day or week. But other times we're just like stuck. So like right now, for instance, we're kind of stuck
Yeah.
on the boat waiting for the storm to pass. We don't even have the dinghy out because of just some of the
Oh,
weather and stuff
sure.
like
Yeah.
that. And so we're stuck in this small space. Yesterday was a little rough. It was gloomy out, and I haven't adjusted fully to this life yet. It's only been about 10 weeks, like I said. There's some routines that I haven't been able to establish quite yet, like
Mm.
an exercise routine. I haven't really been able to
Yeah. I
figure
was
that
curious
out
about
quite
that.
yet.
That seems
Um,
challenging.
yeah, it's tough, and
No
even like
pull-ups.
I I have to look. I have to rig something up,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
So that's still something I
I
need to
saw we
like
did that on a
do.
boat we were on. We're like, well, and we kind of grabbed onto the cab and we're like, we could do pull-ups. All right, let's do that.
Nice. That inspires me. I actually have some ideas on where I could make that happen now that you say it. But even the other thing is like the lack of community, in-person community. I get a lot
Sure,
of
sure.
community through friends who I text message or on Substack. Even I build a
Yeah,
little
yeah.
community.
Pretty cool.
More surprising than or more of a community than I
Mhm.
thought I'd have it by this point. Just people that are really interested in what we're going through and what we're discovering, and that's been awesome to just sign in every time I open
Yeah.
my Substack app and see something, or just be able to connect with folks. But an in-person community is something that I really do miss, and so that's something we're putting a lot of thought into for our next steps about how we can build some of that more in the sailing world. And so, there's these little tweaks, but I also know I have enough experience in my life just making big changes that I know that stuff is kind of in the details, and it just takes time to
Right.
figure out like
Yeah.
how to establish that kind of stuff you need. But it's not like a no, like a deal breaker. It does come if you realize you need it, you figure out a way to make it happen, and you make it work. So
Right.
I have no
Yeah.
doubt that within, you know, it's only been 2.5 months. I have a feeling that within 2.5 more months, if you check back in with me, I'd have solutions to those problems in ways that
Yeah.
work at least for a time. So that's also part of this is just
I bet.
figuring it all out as it comes up and trying to mitigate problems, but also solve the ones that come up as they do.
Yeah. I would imagine there's probably a pretty significant community that does a lot of sailing, maybe not as ambitious as you, but kind of different ports. And they kinda probably have meetups. I wouldn't be surprised. They're like, "Hey, we're gonna be here. Are you gonna be here?" And people are like, "Yeah, we'll see you in 2 weeks," or whatever it might be, and, it seems like a very supportive community from what I've heard. I've had some friends who've lived on boats and done a lot of sailing, and I think there is something that happens. You mentioned kind of nature and the weather. Like, I just spent 6 weeks in Alaska, which is also a place where when you do a lot of backpacking like we did, and we kinda went up the mountains into the cabins, like, the weather dictates a lot. It's like, you gotta flow with it, and it simplifies life in some ways where it's like, "Hey, it's storming. We're not gonna leave the cabin today. It's just the way it is, and okay, we'll play cards and we'll eat." We ate way too much, but, it simplifies life in some ways. It kinda gets back to the root of being part of the world around us versus in these buildings and cars where it's like, we don't care what the weather is. It doesn't matter to us. Um, It is a little more natural. It's a little more exciting and interesting. But I bet there's a whole community in it, because I know in Alaska there is too, where people are very supportive, because it is kind of like, oh, it's us against this, and we're going to share our catch with you. Like we had people share their salmon with us and all
Mm,
kinds of cool stuff. So there's some interesting stuff that happens, I think, when you're teamed up against or part of the world and against nature and the weather and supporting each other. It's kind of cool. I think you'll probably find the
absolutely.
same.
Yeah, there's a synergy that occurs, or like a rhythm that
Yeah.
when you can really just tap into that and accept it, like you said, where if there's a storm, you're just not able to do the thing you thought you wanted to do, and
Yeah.
you accept that and you sit with that and you make do with what nature gives you.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, one of the ways I'm looking at where we're looking at this right now is breaking this up into phases, sort of, and
Hmm.
thinking about it in a much more tangible way. Because even the idea of sailing around the world is so big to me right now.
Yeah.
It's bigger to me now than it was before we started,
Oh,
because
I
now
bet.
I
Yeah.
understand like even what it takes to go 800 miles and
Sure. And
all
how
that went into
vast
this.
the ocean is. Yeah.
Yeah, and how scary and like how temperamental and how many skill
Yeah.
like how much
Yeah.
how we still need to learn certain skills. We still need to outfit the boat in ways that we really didn't
Mm-hmm.
understand perfect, when we left. And so yeah, we're trying to look at this in phases. Where phase one was really getting the boat ready
Right.
and getting out there and get moving onto the boat. And there are people who live this sort of lifestyle who really preach with the idea of like go small, go now, or just buy a boat that doesn't really need much work and learn how to sail it and then leave. And that's kind of
Right.
the ethos
Yeah.
that we brought to this. But the next phase is really learn how to thrive on the boat and
Hmm.
in this area and in this arena. And then the next thing is sustainability and like how do we sustain ourselves long
Right.
term?
Yeah.
This isn't just a vacation. This is a real
Yeah.
lifestyle change.
That's right.
So we need things like that community and like that you're talking about, and that's going to take some time to figure out. Like
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
know that it exists online and things like that, but just the way things have worked physically, we that's been one of the more surprising things is just that we haven't really been able to meet many people in person. And but I know it'll come, and we'll have people
Mm-hmm.
to share
Yeah.
their catch with us, like you said.
Yeah.
Someday we'll be able to share it
Exactly.
back, and it's gonna be awesome. But yeah, it'll just take a
It's
little
very
bit of time to
cool.
build that.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure you'll get there. Um, there's something else I wanted to touch on because, I've been following you for a few weeks, in your notes on Substack, and the very supportive stuff, and then the stuff that's like, oh, I don't think I could ever do that. And it's like, it's too scary. And I think of it as this coin that has these two sides. One is fear and one is regret. And I think in my early days of my life, I was more risk averse. I'd say my wife actually drew me out because she's way more adventurous and like, well, we'll see what happens. It's like we can take a risk and there's going to be a big payoff if we do this. And so it is kind of going through that door, everything you want's on the other side of fear, right? And so this whole thing of fear versus regret and thinking about that. And how do you think about that? And it sounds like I know where you are with this, but kind of the interaction you've had with some folks online and this concept of being afraid, or are you going to regret this later in life?
Yeah. Well, it is something I deal with. I'm not one of these totally fearless people. I'm not like Alex Honnold, like doing the free solo stuff, who
Oh,
has like
geez.
some sort of different neurochemistry. It turns out,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm definitely someone that does feel fear, and um, and that's just something I have to walk through
Right.
and get to the other side of constantly. But it's something that I've learned that I can do, um, and
Yeah.
with practice, it gets much easier. And so the way that I was thinking about this early on was that um, I was really more fearful that I was going to wake up in 10 years and not be able to, and not have a life that I could be proud of, that I could
Right.
actually
Yeah.
feel like was worthwhile. Because, like I said earlier, I really did feel like my career was on a sort of predictable autopilot. It was taking me somewhere that I could see basically what it would look like
Sure.
10 years from now if I were to stay on that track. And it would have been, like I said, good stuff probably. But the predictability of it really bothered me, that I felt like I
Hmm.
had already lived it. And, and that just was totally unacceptable to me. So, and my husband felt the same, thankfully. And so even though there was like a lot of uncertainty in the
Yeah.
decisions that we made and the lifestyle that we decided to embrace, that was actually part of the excitement. And like one of the deciding
Mm-hmm.
factors was that we wanted to embrace the unknown. Like we wanted to really fully go into a place where we had no idea what the outcome would be and
Yeah.
be able to walk through that. And some of that was even like about goals of gaining resiliency in
Hmm.
life, because even in a predictable life or, you know, in a stable career or whatever,
Right.
there's things that can happen, right? Like the economy changes, there's wars, there's uh, crazy politics that could intervene, or who knows what
Yes.
things will look like, right? And so I always kind of had this idea that even a stable life wasn't a really safe
It's
one.
not. It's
Um,
not stable.
in that way,
Exactly.
yeah. So there was also a sort of attraction to gaining that resiliency and realizing
Hmm.
that, hey, I feel fear about doing this thing I've never done before, but I want to be able to walk through it. And so that's
Right.
something that I try to tell people with, you know, some of my readers, is that fear is real and
Yeah. Yeah.
it is information for sure, but it shouldn't be like the end of the conversation about whether we decide to do something, because
Right.
there is another side of it, and that can be the most rewarding thing in the world. And so I
Right.
actually have
Yeah.
I hear from other sailors a lot. This is something that's pretty well known, is that you experience your highest highs and your lowest lows
I bet.
on the sailboat. And there are people that really argue that you can't experience the high highs without experiencing the low lows, and the contrast is
Yeah.
really the
I think it's
important
true.
piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm starting to get a sense of that. Honestly, that's a concept that seems so obvious to some folks, but for me, it's a little hard to wrap my head around, because I think maybe it's just like my simplistic thinking, where it's like, no, there's like life where you can just eat great food and you can have all these great experiences and just enjoy it. But I really I haven't that hasn't been my experience. My experience on the boat so far has been that when I take the easy route, like even when we decide to turn on the engine and motor somewhere
Oh,
instead of
sure.
sail,
Yeah.
that's a huge disappointment. I feel like we didn't earn
I
that
bet.
in
Yeah.
the same way, and it's the same with like really doing something on the other side of fear. And so to me, like, yeah, the regret would have been the risk of regret was so big that
Right.
I
Yeah.
the fear was relatively small. And that's
Right.
still how it feels to be. Even though some days I think like, oh man, my life would be so much easier if I just went back to what I was doing.
Just had a job. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it would be in some ways. Like, but like, what does that bring with it? You know, and
Right. Yeah.
what is an easy life? Like, how is that really rewarding, and how is that really like interesting and exciting and fulfilling? And to me, that it's not. Um,
No. No. No, I understand. It's funny. I think I posted something on notes today about the people who I think fear death the most are those who haven't lived yet. I think that was me. I mean, I think I used to fear death more before I kind of lived. And I think that
mm,
was the fear, is that I was working, I was trying to get to this retirement, and then I could live life, but I'm not there yet. So it was a huge fear. It's like, oh, what if I die in a car accident on the way to work and I didn't get a chance to live life? And then a health scare kind of knocked me out of this, where I was like, I'm not going to wait for this and I'm going to go for it. And it's been, yeah, 15 years now that I've been doing this. And I will admit my fear of death has gone way down. I'm like, I don't want to die. I love life and I want to, there's so much more I want to do. But I feel like I've lived more in the last 15 years than I did in the previous, whatever, 20, 30 years. And I've done a lot of things I always wanted to do. And there's still more. But now I feel like, hey, if I died, at least I got a chance to live life. And so I'm not afraid of death like I used to be. I'm just not. And I think that's part of it. It's like, get rid of those regrets, live a
mm,
larger life, and then you'll be less afraid because you won't feel like you kind of checked out before you had a chance to even have anything exciting happen in your life. I don't
yeah,
know. I don't
I
know.
like I like that you pointed out that the fear of death doesn't necessarily go away per
No.
se, or something. Or I don't know if it's like, because I don't want to die at all.
Yeah.
Like I love life so much. That's something that I've learned quite a bit and had some like really interesting, um, just like information in the last few days, even where, you know, we sailed to New York City, like I said, and we got off the boat and walked through Manhattan, and I
That's so
started to
cool.
imagine what it would be like Yeah, and
Yeah.
I started to imagine what it would be like to like live in Manhattan again. You know, I never lived in
Sure,
Manhattan, but
sure. Yeah,
like
yeah.
just like live in a city again and have those sorts of the availability of restaurants and coffee shops and art
Yeah, yeah.
and cinema and all these sorts of things that I love. And then we went back to the boat that night, and there was something really beautiful about it. Obviously, like
Yeah.
something about living on a boat, and I realized that it's not even this either or thing for me. It's like
No,
I do
you get
love
both.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do love life, and so when we are in a really precarious situation on the boat, in the moment, actually, it doesn't really occur to me in the same way. We just have to get through it. Like I don't fear
Right.
death in
Sure.
that moment, but it does occur to me before we're about to start uh, a sail, especially when I know that the weather might be bad or the waves
Mhm.
might be high or something. I just think about, okay, damn it, that would not be cool today to like to be in
Not
like a
today,
life
man.
threatening, yeah. But I just have to believe that the risks are way lower than they might feel sometimes
You
because
talked about that, and
yeah,
we were just chatting about this before we started recording, but that's where I think we first engaged is like you said, everybody's telling me, "Oh, you should be afraid. It's so risky to sail around the world. Aren't you scared?" You're like, "Hey, your chance of being in a car accident is way greater, and you're hopping on the road every day." I used to drive 2 to 4 hours a day for my job, which is a
wow,
nightmare, and, way more risky, way more people die in the US in car accidents, and I hear it all the time when I do a lot of hiking and backpacking in California, now Alaska. Yeah, there are bears and mountain lions, and they're like, "Aren't you afraid? You're gonna get killed, you're gonna get eaten. How could you do that?" Like, I don't know. I'm not afraid of that. I'm like we said, I'm more afraid of a life that I'm not proud of or didn't enjoy, but I know that the risk of doing things like getting in a car or getting cancer is way greater than being eaten by a bear. It's like not even close. So it's I don't know, and I think you kind of had the same comment where it's like, no, I'm in way more danger and risk doing everyday things that no one thinks twice about versus sailing. It's just it's just not the same.
yeah. I actually, it's funny you mentioned the bear example again because before we moved to the coast, we lived in Denver, Colorado, and one of the reasons we lived there was for the amazing nature and the
Yeah,
hikes and
yeah.
the national parks and all that stuff. And I had a such a extreme fear of bears actually that would keep me from doing those sorts of hikes sometimes, especially alone. But those were
Oh, sure.
experiences that I wanted to have was what it would be like to camp and like to experience
Mhm.
nature like I am today on the sailboat, but in a different way. And one of the things that helped me was to actually learn that in the last 100 years, fewer than 100 people have died in bear attacks
Right.
in North America, and something like half of them are in Alaska, actually, which doesn't
Yeah.
negate
Yeah.
the you know anything really, but still, like I was in Denver, you know, it wasn't like I had to really check my risk with the
Yeah. Yeah.
statistics, and that did help me in the same way that knowing that there hasn't been a major airplane crash in quite a while. I think
Right.
there have been
Right.
in the last couple of years actually, but there was a time where there was a string of years where there
Sure.
weren't any
Yeah.
airplane crashes and stuff, and that sort of reality check does help me understand um, that the risks are not as high as I might think. But I'm curious for you, like because you did mention that you did maybe have a period in your life where you were more afraid. How did you
Yeah.
overcome some of that?
It's like one of the things I tell people, and there's a lot of fear like this. Like I used to be afraid of public speaking, and then I kind of conquered that. And actually, I got on the other side of it and said, "Man, I love public speaking." It's like I would never have been able to experience this if I'd let the fear stop me. Part of it is like it is doing the analysis, saying, "Well, what's the worst thing that could happen? And if that happens, what will I do?" And so I think I do a bit of that now, where it's like, "Well, what's the worst thing to happen? Can I recover from that? What are the odds of it?" It's like, yeah, I'm way more likely to get in a car accident than a plane crash or be eaten by a bear. So that's part of it. Being smart about it, I'm not foolhardy. It's not like I don't go cliff jumping and I don't free solo like we were talking about. I don't do things like that. There are things that I know are within my abilities, and I try to be smart. We know where we are. Polar bears, for example, are way more dangerous than black bears. Good example. Polar bears, yeah, you better be careful. They're a different beast, certainly. But being smart about where you go, knowing what to do, having bear spray, all that good stuff. And I think you just prepare as much as you can. It'll never be perfect. Um, but being prepared, being smart, looking at the real risk, and then saying, well, if that happened, what would I do? And thinking through that, and then making peace with that and say, okay, if that happens, that's what I'll do. That's how I'll move past it. Yeah, a life without risk or fear is a pretty boring life. That's a life of regret, definitely. That's the biggest thing they say when they talk to people who are dying. People in their old age is like, what's the worst thing? You're like, I have so many regrets. I wish I had done this. I wish I'd asked this person out. I wish I had taken that job. I wish I'd traveled the world. I don't want that. I don't want that. And I know it sounds like you don't want it either. Not at all.
Yeah.
So what comes next for you guys? Where are you after the storms clear and you move on from New York?
Yeah, so we're heading actually to Newport, Rhode Island. That's probably our final
Oh,
stop
cool.
north, and that's when the wind. So about around September is when the winds change from being prevailing southerly winds to prevailing northerly winds.
Okay.
So it makes it a lot harder to make northern progress, basically, around September time. So that's about when we're going to start heading south again. And
Okay.
we actually have some equipment that we are going to buy over the next month or so to really gear us up for the next phase, which is going to the Caribbean. So in
nice.
the fall, we're going to somewhere in the Caribbean. We're thinking like maybe Antigua or something around there, and then work our way around some of those islands, and again get some more experience with crossing, doing some multi-day ocean voyages and things, and just experiencing what it's like to be outside the U.S. and again just getting some of those skills. And then the plan is to go to Latin America, and we're not exactly sure how we're going to do it. We do have dreams of going around South America. That's something that
down around the tip.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, there's fjords through there, so you don't actually have to go like around the tip into the ocean. You can like go through the fjords, but it's very remote and just incredible scenery.
Wow.
And it would be incredible to do that. And our boat actually does have the ability to do those sorts of like multi-week,
cool.
even month plus sort of off the grid adventures. We have tons of water. We have solar power and things like that. And so we could make it happen, but we're still deciding like what this will look like. And we could go through the Panama Canal and get to the Pacific, but people in this world say that you kind of make plans like by writing them in sand on a low tide or something. And so by the time the tide comes back, your plans are obsolete. And so we try to have a lot of humility about that. Like, who knows? We might learn that there's some crazy islands or some crazy place that we never thought about, or we get invited somewhere to some, group sailing adventure and we go on that, or, we decide to cross the Atlantic instead of going around and crossing the Pacific. But we do have those sorts of plans, is to explore the rest of the Americas and then eventually pick an ocean to cross. And we hope, that by the time we're ready to do that in 6 months, a year or something like that, it'll be, we'll be prepared. We'll be like basically ready to face what that looks like. And right now it feels pretty overwhelming, but again, that's not how you do hard things. It's not, you don't do them overnight. You don't do them tomorrow all the time. You work up to them sometimes and you prepare, like you were saying. And so that is a huge part of this adventure, is building to our capabilities. And, something that also you said about being able to avoid regret is that I really have this attitude of really seeing what's possible for us, or like what is possible for me in this life. And the answer is more than I think. It's much more than I think. And so even with these fears, like putting those aside, that's actually not the biggest impediment. A lot of it is just like kind of comfort or self-doubt, or picking all these other things. And we could talk more about that, but one of the big driving factors for me is to really just see what's possible. And I am becoming a sailor. I am a sailor, but I'm becoming like a real sailor at heart, and that's a really cool discovery process to see. So anyway, check back in a year, and we don't know where we'll be, but there's definitely it's gonna be surprising. I bet.
It's the more that I've been coaching since 2016 full time, the more I'm discovering that It's more about attitude and confidence than anything else, because it's like you can learn this stuff. You can learn, you can gain the experience, but it's when you're afraid to take that step that holds you back. And I would imagine every day, every time you conquer a new challenge or learn something new or do something new or achieve something new, your confidence grows even more and your belief in yourself. And like you said, just knowing, man, I could probably do more than I could ever dream of if I just keep going and I keep building upon this. And it is that confidence and self belief, I think, that separates people from those who achieve versus not, because no one's perfect. No one has all the skills, and no one's a genius and this and this and this. It's like, nah, they just went for it. And
Yeah.
it's the confidence, man. It's like, and everybody can
Yeah.
have more confidence.
Yeah, I would even parse that for myself, and I'd be interested to hear what you think. But I feel like courage comes before confidence, like because
Yeah.
I'm not actually a confident sailor. I think I'm a courageous sailor. I'm
Yeah.
I'm like a courageous adventurer, and it's the confidence, like you said, is something I you build over time through
Exactly. Yeah.
practice and
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
But really, it did come from some courage at first, and I think
Oh,
that
sure.
courage I've thought about like where does this courage come from then? Like you could
Hmm.
ask these questions about what's the origin of all this stuff. And for me,
Right.
it was
Right.
again going back to the conversation we had earlier about really realizing that I didn't want to be living the life I was living before anymore.
Yeah.
And once I
Yeah.
realized that I wasn't living the life that I wanted, I started to ask like, okay, well, what do I need? What do I
Hmm.
need to
Hmm.
have a fulfilling life? And then once I figured that out, it was like, okay, well, what do people do then and when they have these needs? Like, what are some examples of people
Right.
that have actually gone out and done that thing, had the adventurous life, lived in nature,
Right.
been free from some of the confines of a predictable career, some of those things that we talked about, and I started to find examples and role models basically of people who I can look up
Mm.
to,
Hmm. Hmm.
that could show me what was possible. And from that, I started to be like, okay, if this person can do it, I can do it.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
and that's how I've kind of approached my whole life actually. Like I don't know if you've gotten this far into my notes at all, but I started going. I went back to school when I was like 22. I went to community college. I thought I never
Yeah.
was going to go to college ever, and I decided to go back to college, and because someone showed me like what a college education was actually good for. It was to be able to think, and it was be able to know stuff and have
Sure. Yeah.
context and all this stuff.
Question
And I was like,
things.
okay,
Yeah.
now I get it. Okay, and once I got obsessed with college and like really learning things and that curiosity, it made me think, okay, well, what else is possible? And I started to realize like, hey, I want to go where the like the biggest academics are and the most like where I can learn the most. And I decided I wanted to go to Harvard, and I was in
Yeah.
community college, and I put in all the time and all the effort and all the work, and I did get into a PhD program at Harvard and got it like full ride and everything, and I finished the PhD, and that's where I started building my career and stuff. But it all started from this idea of like of role models and other
Hmm.
people showing me
Hmm.
what was possible and thinking like, okay, real people are doing these things. They're
Right.
going to
Right.
Harvard. They're building careers. Or like really important, like or fulfilling careers. They're building big companies. They're
Sure.
exploring the world. They're doing these big hikes. They're doing all these things. Like, well, what's so special about them that I can't do that too? And so
That's
even
right.
like, but again, the confidence kind of came after really taking it slow and just
Some
realizing, okay,
courage. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
like I can do I can do this. I'm proving to myself every week. I'm like making some progress, and so that's like where a lot of that genesis comes from for me.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I do think it takes some courage. I think having a role model helps. I think because you said it's like they're human. I'm human. It's like
Yeah.
if they did it, I could do it if I choose to do that. I think having a mentor or something like that helps too. Somebody who's like it. So you need somebody I think outside of you sometimes. And my wife plays that role for me a lot, where they're like, "Why are you holding yourself back?" It's like I see what you're capable of, and I believe in you. And I think having that person that maybe pushes you more, it can see things in you that you can't see. It's hard. Somebody had mentioned, I can't remember who the quote is, but you can't read the label on the outside of a bottle if you're in the bottle. And that's
Mhm.
us. We're inside our bottle and we can't see ourselves from the outside. Not really. And other people can. People who really care about us and love us and want the best for us. And you got to find those people. They're rare, but when they exist and you find them and they're in your life, they are going to tell you, hey, be courageous. Like, you're smart. You're good at this. I've watched you overcome these things. I believe in you. Go for it. And that helps. It really does help. And I'm glad you have a partner who does that for you. That's really important. So for the people listening, and I know there's a lot of people that wish they could be living a more extraordinary life, be more courageous, more adventure in their lives. What would you recommend? How do they take that first step? Because it's not a leap into the unknown, like jumping into outer space. It is a step-by-step kind of thing. What could they do?
So I think the most important thing for me has been even before I decided to make this change. I've had a lot of chapters in my life, and a lot of the new chapters, they start with a reflection about a simple question, which is, looking at my life honestly, how it is right now, and asking,
Mhm.
like, is this even what I want?
Right.
Or
Yeah.
it's like a very matter of fact question, and sometimes the answer is yes. Like,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
and sometimes, I'll be doing something really hard, like when I was getting my PhD, and even when I was miserable, like in the day to day, I would ask myself, is this what I want? And the answer was yes. I
Yeah.
did want
Okay.
that. And so it doesn't, like, it's not a get out of jail free card to just, like,
Right.
stop doing hard things, because I do want to do hard things. I want to see what's
Yeah.
possible for myself again and all that. But there are times when I've asked myself, is this what I want? And the answer is no. And
Sure.
so that's like a really honest place to start. And from there, I would start to ask myself more questions, like, okay, well, what do I need? And going back to some of those things I mentioned earlier, and then what's a practical path to actually get what I need? Like, what
Yeah.
are other people doing? What would the budget look like? What can I
Hmm.
afford? Or
Hmm.
like, how long?
Yeah.
Like, what's the timeline look like? What are I would read books then about, like, what else is possible, or different topics that I'm interested in, and see, like, how are other people thinking about these kinds of things and stuff. But it
Right.
all starts with asking myself if this is even the life that I want. And I think a lot of people are afraid to ask that, honestly,
Yeah. It's a
because
tough
of what the
question.
answer might
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
But it is a very humbling and very, like, important one. And so I would recommend that people ask themselves twice a year, is this even the life that I
Mm-hmm.
want? And if the answer is yes, then that's amazing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't
Exactly.
have to
Yeah.
be this big adventurous life. I think there's also people, we have different priorities at different times in our lives, right?
Sure.
Like when I
Yeah.
was getting my PhD, or if we have young kids, or if we have, if we're still putting in some of those early career years where we haven't
Right. Right.
built enough experience or confidence or capital or whatever you need to take that next step. Sometimes, uh, it helps to have that and put that time
Yeah.
in, at least for a while. But uh, but but yeah, like, working toward some of these goals about what we actually want, it takes time. It's not, you don't just flip a
Hmm.
switch. And so it's the earlier that you're on the wrong track, or you might be on
Yeah.
the wrong track, is a very, very valuable thing.
Yeah.
Um, and it
Yeah.
comes with
I think
self-reflection, in my
I
opinion.
think the last thing you
It
want to
starts
do
with
is put 20, 30 years into something that you're like, no, I didn't want this. And you should have asked that question a couple times a year. And having the courage to challenge it then, to say, okay, well, now what are you going to do about it? If that's not what you want, what are you going to do about it? You got to
yeah.
do something about it one way or the other. And that takes courage. But that's fantastic. I like that. Well, thank you so much for making time to come on the show. This is extraordinary. I'm going to share links to everything so you can go follow Corey and his adventures and support him and help him with this, because I think it's something that I think a lot of us dream of doing, but he's doing it. They are doing it. So it's pretty wonderful. But thank you for taking the time to talk with me today.
Thank you so much, Larry. I appreciate it.
Until next time, I wish you the best of luck with pursuing the life of your dreams so you can be happier, healthier, and more fulfilled.